The blood on Zara Palmer's wedding dress had dried to a rust-brown stain that spread across the white lace like a terrible flower, and she sat on the weathered steps of the Challies, Idaho church, unable to stop the tears that carved clean tracks through the dust on her cheeks. The September sun beat down mercilessly on her dark hair, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the sounds of the town going about its business as if this were just another Thursday in 1882, as if her entire world had not shattered just hours before. She did not hear the footsteps approaching until a shadow fell across her, blocking out some of that relentless sunshine. Zara looked up through blurred vision to see a man standing there, tall and lean, with kind gray eyes that seemed to take in everything about her situation in a single glance. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, dusty from the trail, with a worn hat he now removed as he looked down at her. Without asking permission, he sat down beside her on the steps, close enough that she could smell leather and sage and honest sweat. He was quiet for a long moment, seeming to gather his thoughts, and then he spoke words that made absolutely no sense at all. "Will you marry me?" Zara stared at him, certain she had misheard, that grief had finally broken something in her mind. "What?" "I know how this looks," the cowboy said, his voice low and earnest. "I know I must seem crazy, but I have been watching you sit here for the past hour, and I saw them carry that body out earlier, saw the marshal and the doctor talking in hushed voices. This is a small town, and news travels. Your intended was shot dead at the altar by his former business partner over a cattle dispute. You have no family here. You came all the way from St. Louis to marry a man you only knew through letters, and now he is gone." The accuracy of his assessment shocked her into silence. Everything he said was true. Samuel Montgomery had seemed so perfect in his letters, so kind and promising. She had sold everything she owned to make the journey west, burned every bridge behind her. Her parents had died 2 years prior in a fire, and her only brother had made it clear she was a burden he no longer wished to carry. Samuel had offered her hope, a fresh start, a future. And then, just as the preacher had asked if anyone objected, the church doors had burst open. She could still see it all so clearly. The wild-eyed man with the gun, the accusations screamed about stolen cattle and forged bills of sale, Samuel stepping in front of her protectively, the deafening crack of the gunshot, the way Samuel had crumpled, blood blooming across his vest. The chaos that followed as men wrestled the shooter to the ground while the doctor rushed forward, though everyone could see it was already too late. "I do not understand what you are proposing," Zara said, her voice hoarse from crying. "You do not know me. I do not know you." "My name is Archer Thornton," the cowboy said. "I own a ranch about 15 miles north of here. It is not much, but it is mine, free and clear. I have been looking for a wife for some time now, but the truth is there are not many unmarried women in this territory, and the ones who are here have no interest in the hard life of a ranch. I need help, a partner. You need a home and a future. This could be a practical arrangement that benefits us both." "A practical arrangement," Zara repeated, almost laughing at the absurdity of it. "I just watched a man die. I am covered in his blood, and you think I want to marry a complete stranger?" "I think you have few other options," Archer said, not unkindly. "You have no money, no family, nowhere to go. In a few hours the church ladies will come and express their sympathy, but that sympathy will not include a place to live or food to eat. This is hard country, Miss Palmer. It does not forgive, and it does not wait." The worst part was that he was right. Zara had exactly $17 to her name, the wedding dress she wore, and a small trunk of belongings at the boarding house where she had stayed last night. The boarding house matron had made it clear that the room was paid only through today. After that, Zara would be on her own. "Why me?" she asked. "Why not place an advertisement like other men seeking wives?" "I did," Archer admitted. 4 times over the past year, got 3 responses. 2 women changed their minds before ever making the journey. The third took one look at the ranch and caught the next stage back to civilization. "I am not good with words on paper, Miss Palmer. I am better with actions, with work, with showing rather than telling. But I am an honest man, and I would treat you with respect. We could start as partners and see where it leads." Zara looked down at her hands, still trembling slightly. Everything had happened so fast. Yesterday morning she had been excited, nervous, preparing for her wedding. She had worn her mother's pearl earrings and practiced her vows. She had imagined the life she would build with Samuel, the children they might have, the home they would make together. And now he was lying in the undertaker's back room, and she was sitting on church steps discussing a marriage of convenience with a stranger. "I need time to think," she said. "Take until sunset," Archer replied, standing and replacing his hat. "I will be at the Silver Dollar Saloon. If you decide yes, come find me there. If you decide no, I will wish you the best of luck and be on my way." He walked away without another word, leaving Zara alone with her thoughts and the terrible weight of the decision before her. She watched him go, noting the confident set of his shoulders, the way he moved like someone comfortable in his own skin. He was handsome in a weathered sort of way, probably 30 or so, with sun-creased eyes and capable hands. But what did she really know about him? Nothing except what he had told her, and words were cheap. The church door opened behind her and Reverend Matthews emerged, his expression grave and sympathetic. "Miss Palmer, I am so very sorry for your loss. Is there anything I can do for you? Anyone I can contact on your behalf?" "No, thank you," Zara said, forcing herself to stand even though her legs felt unsteady. "There is no one." The Reverend shifted uncomfortably. "The ladies of the congregation have prepared Samuel for burial. The funeral will be tomorrow morning. As for his estate, I believe he has a cousin in Boise who will need to be notified. In the meantime, if you need assistance with accommodations or travel arrangements back to St. Louis, I am sure we can organize a collection. A collection. Charity." The thought made Zara's stomach turn. She had come west to build a new life, not to go crawling back to a city that held nothing but painful memories and a brother who had made it clear she was not welcome. But what were her alternatives? Take Archer Thornton up on his strange proposal. Marry a man she had spoken to for all of 10 minutes. "I will manage, Reverend," she said, gathering what remained of her dignity. "Thank you for your concern." She walked back to the boarding house in a daze, barely registering the sympathetic looks from townspeople or the way they whispered behind their hands as she passed. The boarding house matron, Mrs. Chen, met her at the door with gentle hands and warm water. "Come, dear," she said. "Let us get you out of that dress and cleaned up. You should not have to wear such reminders." In the small room that had been hers for exactly one night, Zara stripped off the ruined wedding dress, watching as Mrs. Chen bundled it up efficiently. She washed away the blood and dust, then dressed in the only other good dress she owned, a simple blue cotton that had been her mother's. As she fastened the buttons, she caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the washstand. At 21, she still had her youth, but the Wild West was not kind to women alone. She had seen enough of Challies in the past day to know it was a rough town, a mining and ranching community where men outnumbered women 10 to 1. Without protection, without prospects, she would be vulnerable in ways she did not want to contemplate. "Mrs. Chen," Zara asked, "what do you know about a man named Archer Thornton?" The older woman paused in her tidying. "Thornton. He has a ranch north of here." Keeps to himself mostly, but he is known as an honest dealer. Brings his cattle to market regularly, pays his debts, does not cause trouble in town. Lost his parents to fever when he was young, built up the ranch himself over the past decade. Why do you ask? He proposed to me today. On the church steps. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. Did he now? Well, that is bold, but perhaps not as foolish as it sounds. You need a husband and he needs a wife. This country requires practical thinking. You think I would be safe with him? Safer than you would be alone, Mrs. Chen said frankly. I have known Thornton for 5 years and I have never heard a bad word about him. He works hard, he is fair in his dealings, and he does not drink to excess or gamble away his money. You could do much worse, Miss Palmer. Zara sat down on the edge of the bed, her mind spinning. Could she really do this? Marry a stranger out of desperation and practicality? It seemed insane, and yet had her arrangement with Samuel been so different? She had known him only through letters, had agreed to marry him based on words on paper and the promise of a new beginning. At least with Archer, she had looked into his eyes and seen something genuine there, something that spoke of integrity even if she could not yet speak of love. Love. The word felt distant now, almost laughable. She had thought she might grow to love Samuel given time. Perhaps the same could be true with Archer, or perhaps not, but maybe love was a luxury she could no longer afford. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon when Zara made her decision. She repacked her small trunk, settled her account with Mrs. Chen, and walked toward the Silver Dollar Saloon with her heart hammering against her ribs. The saloon was not the kind of place a respectable woman entered, but these were not ordinary circumstances, and she was beyond worrying about appearances. She pushed through the swinging doors into a haze of cigar smoke and conversation that died the moment the men inside realized a woman had entered. Zara scanned the room and found Archer sitting at a corner table, a glass of whiskey untouched in front of him. He stood the moment he saw her, his expression carefully neutral, giving nothing away. Zara crossed the room with her head held high, ignoring the stares and whispers. When she reached Archer's table, she looked him directly in the eye. "I have conditions," she said. Something that might have been relief flickered across his face. "Name them." "We marry, but we do not share a bed until I am ready. You said this would be a partnership, and I will hold you to that. I will work hard, I will help build your ranch, but I will not be forced into anything I am not ready for." "Agreed," Archer said without hesitation. "Anything else? I want your word that you will never raise a hand to me in anger, no matter what happens. And if this does not work, if we find we truly cannot make a life together, you will help me find safe passage to somewhere I can start over." "You have my word on both counts," Archer said solemnly. "Miss Palmer, I am not looking for a servant or a possession. I am looking for a partner, someone to build a life with. I understand this is not how you imagined your future, and I understand you need time to grieve and adjust. I am a patient man." Zara took a shaky breath. "Then yes, I will marry you, Archer Thornton." He smiled then, a genuine smile that softened the hard lines of his face and made him look younger. "I will make the arrangements with Reverend Matthews for tomorrow afternoon, after Samuel's funeral. That will give you time to pay your respects properly." The next morning dawned clear and cold, the Idaho sky a brilliant blue unmarred by clouds. Zara attended Samuel Montgomery's funeral in her blue dress, standing among the small crowd of townspeople who had gathered to pay their respects. She felt like a ghost herself, disconnected from the proceedings, watching from a great distance as they lowered the coffin into the ground. She had barely known Samuel, and now she never would. It seemed impossibly sad and wasteful. After the funeral, She returned to the boarding house to change into her only other respectable dress, a gray wool that seemed appropriate for both mourning and a practical wedding. Mrs. Chen helped her arrange her dark hair, pinning it up with the pearl combs that had been her mother's. "You are doing the right thing," Mrs. Chen said, though whether she was trying to convince Zara or herself was unclear. "You are a survivor, Miss Palmer. You will make a good life for yourself." At 2 o'clock, Zara walked to the church for the second time in 2 days, this time as a bride for the second time. Archer was waiting for her on those same steps where he had first proposed, wearing what were clearly his best clothes, his hair still damp from a recent washing. He offered her his arm, and together they entered the church. Reverend Matthews performed the ceremony with quiet dignity, with Mrs. Chen and the town doctor serving as witnesses. The Reverend kept the service brief, perhaps sensing that neither bride nor groom was in the mood for lengthy speeches about love and devotion. When it came time for the vows, Zara spoke the words clearly, making a promise she only half understood to a man who was still essentially a stranger. Archer's voice was steady as he made his own vows, and when he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, Zara was surprised to feel tears prickling at her eyes. This was real. She was married. To all intents and purposes, she was now Mrs. Archer Thornton. The kiss Archer gave her was chaste, barely a brush of lips, respectful of the circumstances and her recent loss. Then it was done, and they were walking out of the church into the afternoon sunshine as husband and wife. "I have a wagon ready," Archer said. "We should reach the ranch before dark if we leave now." Zara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Everything was happening so fast, and she felt like she was being swept along by currents too strong to resist. Archer helped her into the wagon, loaded her trunk into the back, and then they were leaving Challies behind, heading north into country Zara had never seen. The road wound through stands of pine and open grassland, following a creek that sparkled in the late summer sun. Archer drove with relaxed competence, pointing out landmarks as they passed. "That is Wilson's Spread," he said, gesturing to a cluster of buildings in the distance. "Good neighbors. They have been ranching here since before I bought my land. And over there, that line of cottonwoods marks the path of Yankee Fork. The ranch sits just east of there with good water access and decent grazing." "How much land do you have?" Zara asked, making an effort at conversation. 800 acres. "I started with 210 years ago, saved every penny from working other men's ranches, and bought the rest piece by piece. I run about 300 head of cattle, mostly Herefords. It is not the biggest operation in the territory, but it is solid and debt-free." There was quiet pride in his voice, and Zara found herself respecting that. He had built something from nothing through his own labor and determination. That took strength of character. "What will my role be?" she asked. "What do you need from a partner?" Archer glanced at her, seeming to consider his words carefully. "The ranch house needs a woman's touch, and I will be honest, I am a terrible cook. The hands and I have been getting by on beans and bacon for too long. Beyond that, during calving season and roundup, every pair of hands helps. I have 3 men who work for me year-round, good men, and we hire on a few extra during busy times. You would not be alone out there if that worries you." It did worry her, though she had not articulated it even to herself. The thought of being isolated with a strange man had kept her awake much of the previous night. Knowing there would be other people around eased some of that anxiety. "I can cook," Zara said, "and sew and keep a house. I can learn the rest." "That is all I ask," Archer replied. A willingness to try. They fell into silence again, but it was more comfortable now, less fraught. Zara studied her new husband from the corner of her eye, trying to reconcile the reality of him with the wild turn her life had taken. He had a strong profile, weathered skin that spoke of years under the sun, and hands that were calloused and scarred from hard work. He was not a soft man, but there was a gentleness in the way he handled the horses, a patience that seemed to run deep. The sun was touching the tops of the western mountains when Archer turned the wagon onto a narrower track that led through a stand of aspen trees. "Almost there," he said, and Zara thought she detected a note of nervousness in his voice, as if he worried what she might think of his home. They emerged from the trees, and Zara got her first look at what would be her new life. The ranch house was a solid timber structure, larger than she had expected, with a covered porch and real glass windows. Behind it stood a barn, a stable, several outbuildings, and a network of corrals. Cattle grazed in the distance, dark shapes against the golden grass. It was beautiful in its way, wild and open, so different from the crowded streets of St. Louis. "It is not fancy," Archer said, "but it is well built. I added the second room last year, thinking ahead to when I might have a family. The roof is good, the stove draws well, and the well water is clean and sweet." "It is wonderful," Zara said, and meant it. There was something honest about the place, something real and earned. 3 men emerged from the barn as they approached, clearly alerted by the sound of the wagon. They were all young, perhaps in their early 20s, dressed in the worn clothes of working cowboys. They regarded Zara with open curiosity. Archer pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down, then turned to help Zara descend. "Men, this is my wife, Zara Thornton. Zara, these are my hands. That tall one is Jake Riley, the one with the red hair is Pete Johnson, and the quiet one is Ben Swift." The men removed their hats and offered polite greetings, their eyes full of questions they were too well-mannered to ask. Archer must have sent word ahead somehow, or perhaps they simply knew better than to pry into their boss's business. "Jake, help me get Mrs. Thornton's trunk inside," Archer said. "Pete, see to the horses. Ben, I expect you have supper started." "Yes, sir," Ben said. "Though it is just the usual stew." "That will be fine for tonight," Archer replied. "Tomorrow, Mrs. Thornton will take over the kitchen and we will all eat better for it." The men scattered to their tasks, and Archer led Zara up onto the porch and through the front door. The interior of the house was clean but Spartan, furnished with handmade furniture, and lacking any of the small touches that made a house a home. The main room served as kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace, a wood stove, a rough-hewn table and chairs, and a few shelves holding supplies. A doorway led to what must be the bedroom Archer had mentioned. "I will sleep in the main room," Archer said, following her gaze. "The bedroom is yours until you say otherwise. I meant what I said about respecting your wishes." Zara felt a rush of gratitude for his consideration. "Thank you." Jake brought in her trunk, setting it down carefully in the bedroom before tipping his hat and disappearing. Zara stood in the center of her new home, trying to absorb the reality of her situation. Just 3 days ago, she had been on a stage from Boise, nervous but hopeful about meeting Samuel. Now Samuel was in the ground, and she was married to a different man entirely, standing in a ranch house in the Idaho wilderness. "I know this is not what you wanted," Archer said quietly. "And I know you are grieving. Take whatever time you need to settle in. There is no rush for anything." Zara turned to face him, this stranger who was now her husband. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you really propose to me? The truth, not just the practical reasons." Archer was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes thoughtful. "I told you I am not good with words, so this might come out wrong. When I saw you sitting on those church steps, I saw someone who had lost everything but had not given up. You were not wailing or making a spectacle. You were crying, yes, but you were also thinking, planning. I could see it in your face. You were already trying to figure out what came next. That kind of strength is rare, Miss Palmer. Mrs. Thornton, I mean. I need someone strong beside me. This land, this life, it requires strength. And I thought maybe we could be strong together. It was perhaps the most honest thing anyone had ever said to her. Zara felt something shift in her chest, some small softening toward this man who had offered her a lifeline when she was drowning. I will try to be the partner you need, she said. I cannot promise more than that right now. That is enough, Archer said. That is more than enough. Over the following days, Zara began to settle into the rhythms of ranch life. She took over the kitchen as promised and found a deep satisfaction in cooking for hungry men who appreciated every meal. She scrubbed and organized the house, adding small touches that made it feel more like a home. She learned the names of the horses and cattle, learned to read the weather in the way the men did, learned the 100 small skills that ranching required. Archer was true to his word about giving her space. He slept on a bedroll in the main room and treated her with unfailing courtesy. He never pushed, never demanded, simply worked alongside her as they built a partnership based on mutual respect. The men accepted her presence with good-natured ease, and Zara found herself relaxing into this new life in ways she had not expected. 3 weeks after their wedding, Zara woke early to find Archer already up, standing on the porch and looking out at the pre-dawn darkness with a worried expression. "What is wrong?" she asked, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the morning chill. "Storm coming," he said, pointing to the western sky. "Big one, if I am reading the signs right. We need to get the cattle to lower ground and secure everything that might blow away. It is going to be a long day." He was right. The storm hit just after noon with a fury that shocked Zara. Wind lashed the buildings, rain fell in sheets, and lightning split the sky with terrifying regularity. The men worked in relays, bringing in horses and checking on the cattle, while Zara kept hot coffee and food ready. When one of the barn doors tore loose in the wind, Archer and Jake fought to secure it, getting soaked to the skin in the process. As darkness fell, the worst of the storm passed, leaving behind a steady rain and dropping temperatures. The men gathered in the house, cold and exhausted, and Zara served up hot stew and fresh bread. There was a camaraderie in the shared struggle, a sense of having weathered something together. After the hands had returned to the bunkhouse, Archer sat by the fire, still damp despite having changed into dry clothes. Zara noticed he was favoring his left hand. "Let me see," she said, crossing to him. He held out his hand reluctantly, and she saw the deep gash across his palm, still bleeding sluggishly. "It is nothing. Caught it on a nail when we were fixing the barn door. It needs to be cleaned and bandaged," Zara said firmly. She fetched water and clean cloth, then sat beside him to tend the wound. As she worked, she was acutely aware of his nearness, the way he watched her face, the strength in his calloused hand. "You did well today," Archer said softly. "Keeping everyone fed and the house warm, it mattered." "I am part of this ranch now," Zara replied, concentrating on wrapping the bandage. "Of course I would help. It is more than that, and you know it. You could have stayed in your room, claimed the work was not fit for a lady, but you did not. You jumped in and did whatever needed doing." Zara tied off the bandage and looked up to find Archer's eyes on hers, warm and full of something that made her heart beat faster. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with an awareness that had been building slowly over the past weeks. "Archer," she started, but did not know how to finish. He reached up with his good hand and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I know we started this as a practical arrangement, but I want you to know that I am grateful every day that you said yes. You have brought life to this place. You have brought life to me." Zara found herself leaning into his touch, her eyes closing for just a moment. When she opened them again, Archer was closer, close enough that she could feel his breath on her face. And then, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he kissed her. It was different from the chaste kiss they had shared at their wedding. This kiss was real, full of warmth and question and careful hope. Zara felt something bloom inside her, something she had thought dead after watching Samuel fall. When they finally pulled apart, she was breathless. "I am sorry," Archer said immediately. "I should not have assumed." "No," Zara interrupted, touching her fingers to his lips. "Do not apologize, I wanted that too." His smile was like sunrise, slow and transformative. "I have been wanting to kiss you for 2 weeks now. Every time you laugh at something Pete says, every time you hum while you cook, every time you push your hair back when you are concentrating. You are beautiful, Zara, and you are so much stronger than you know." No one had ever spoken to her like that before, with such simple honesty. Zara felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of grief this time. They were something else entirely. "Stay here tonight," she said, the words coming from some deep, brave place inside her. "Not in the bedroom, not yet, but here by the fire. I do not want to be alone, and I think you do not either." So Archer built up the fire and they sat together on the old sofa, Zara curled against his side, his arm around her shoulders. They talked deep into the night, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future, the small details that made them who they were. And when Zara finally fell asleep, warm and safe, it was with her head on Archer's shoulder and his hand gently stroking her hair. The next morning, she woke to find a blanket tucked around her and Archer already up, starting the stove for breakfast. He looked over when she stirred and smiled, a private smile just for her. "Good morning, wife," he said, and the word sounded like a promise. "Good morning, husband," Zara replied, and felt the truth of it settle into her bones. Things changed after that night, subtle shifts that deepened into something real and lasting. Zara and Archer moved from being two people sharing a house to being actual partners, then friends, and finally to something that looked increasingly like love. Zara found herself thinking about him during the day, looking forward to the evenings when they could sit together and talk. She noticed the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the competence of his hands as he worked, the gentleness he showed to the animals and to her. 6 weeks after their wedding, on a clear October evening with the aspens turned to gold, Zara went to Archer as he stood on the porch watching the sunset. "I have been thinking," she said, slipping her hand into his. "About what?" he asked, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "About us. About this marriage. About what I want." Archer turned to face her, his expression serious. "Tell me." "I want this to be a real marriage, Archer. In every way, I want to share your life, your bed, your future. I want to build something lasting with you." He cupped her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. "Are you certain? I do not want you to feel pressured or obligated. What we have now, it is enough for me if it needs to be." "I am certain," Zara said firmly. "You have given me time to heal, time to choose." "And I choose you, Archer Thornton. I choose this life. I choose us." The kiss he gave her then was full of relief and joy and desire long held in check. When he swept her up into his arms and carried her into the bedroom, Zara went willingly, ready to begin this new chapter of their life together. Their wedding night, delayed by weeks of patience and growing trust, was tender and careful, Archer attuned to every response, every hesitation, making sure she felt safe and cherished. And when Zara woke the next morning wrapped in her husband's arms, she felt something she had not felt since her parents died. She felt like she had come home. Winter came hard and fast to the Idaho mountains, blanketing the ranch in snow and limiting the work that could be done outside. It was a season of drawn and living, of long evenings by the fire, of learning to live together in close quarters. Zara discovered that Archer snored when he slept on his back, that he had a dry sense of humor that could make her laugh until she cried, that he was fiercely protective of those he cared about. Archer learned that Zara sang to herself when she thought no one was listening, that she was terrible at cards but refused to give up, that she had a stubborn streak a mile wide and the kindest heart he had ever known. They celebrated Christmas with the hands, Zara cooking a feast and everyone exchanging small, practical gifts. Zara gave Archer a new shirt she had sewn, and he gave her a beautiful carved wooden box for her mother's pearls. "I made it during the evenings," he admitted. "I wanted you to have something special." The fact that he had taken the time to create something with his own hands, something beautiful and useful and personal, moved Zara deeply. She kissed him in front of everyone, not caring about the good-natured whistles from the hands. In February, Zara woke feeling queasy and knew with absolute certainty what it meant. She was pregnant. The realization filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She had lost so much in her life, and the thought of bringing a child into this hard world frightened her. But when she told Archer that evening, his reaction erased her fears. "A baby," he breathed, his hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "Zara, you have just made me the happiest man in Idaho." "You are not worried," she asked, "about the dangers, the difficulties?" "Of course I am worried," Archer said honestly. "Childbirth is dangerous and raising a child out here will not be easy, but we will face it together, just like we face everything else. You are not alone in this, Zara. You will never be alone again." The pregnancy progressed through the spring and into summer. Zara continued working as long as she could, though Archer and the hands tried to limit her activities. She was having none of it, insisting that she was pregnant, not an invalid. By late August, though, she was forced to slow down, her belly round and heavy, the baby active inside her, on a warm September afternoon, exactly 1 year after she had sat crying on the church steps in Challies. Zara went into labor. Archer sent Jake racing to town to fetch the doctor and Mrs. Chen, who had experience as a midwife, while he stayed by Zara's side, holding her hand through the contractions and doing his best to hide his terror. Mrs. Chen arrived first, bustling into the house with calm efficiency. "Out," she ordered Archer. "Go boil water, prepare clean linen, stay out of the way." "I want him here," Zara gasped between pains. "Please, I need him." Mrs. Chen looked surprised but nodded. "Then he stays, but he does what I say." The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Archer stayed beside Zara the entire time, letting her grip his hand hard enough to bruise, murmuring encouragement, wiping the sweat from her face. And when their son finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Archer wept openly. "A boy," Mrs. Chen announced, wrapping the baby in clean cloth and placing him in Zara's arms. Healthy and strong lunged. Zara looked down at her son, at his tiny perfect face and downy dark hair, and felt her heart expand beyond what she thought possible. When Archer leaned in to see, she watched his expression transform from exhaustion to wonder. "He is perfect," Archer whispered. "You are both perfect." They named him Samuel Archer Thornton, honoring the man whose death had inadvertently brought them together, the man who should have had his own chance at happiness. It seemed right somehow, a way of acknowledging the strange path that had led to this moment. Little Samuel, who they called Sam from the start, proved to be a good baby, curious and active. He had his mother's dark hair and his father's gray eyes, and watching Archer with their son filled Zara with a contentment she had never imagined possible. The fierce rancher who handled cattle and horses with casual strength was infinitely gentle with his tiny son, singing to him in a surprisingly good voice, walking him through the house when he fussed at night. The hands were equally smitten, taking turns entertaining Sam while Zara cooked or cleaned, teaching him to wave his fists at the horses, making toys from carved wood. The ranch house rang with laughter and life in a way it never had before. 2 years passed in a blur of growth and work and deepening love. Sam learned to walk, then to run, his favorite pastime chasing the barn cats. The ranch prospered, the herd growing, and Archer was able to buy another 200 acres of adjacent land. Zara's garden flourished, providing vegetables through the summer and preserves for the winter. They were building something real and lasting, a legacy for their son. On their 3rd wedding anniversary, Archer had a surprise for Zara. He led her outside after dinner to find a beautiful porch swing he had built, painted white and hung with care. "I know you love watching the sunsets," he said. "I thought you should have a comfortable place to do it." Zara ran her hand over the smooth wood, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "It is beautiful, thank you." They sat together on the swing, Sam drowsing between them, and watched the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. It was a perfect moment, simple and profound. "Do you ever think about that day?" Archer asked quietly. "When you were sitting on the church steps?" "Sometimes," Zara admitted. "It feels like a different lifetime, like it happened to someone else. Do you have regrets?" She turned to look at him, at this man who had given her everything, who had seen her at her lowest point and offered her a future. "Not a single one. You gave me a home, Archer. More than that, you gave me a family, a purpose, a life worth living. I know we started from a strange place, but I love you. I love you more than I ever thought I could love anyone." Archer's eyes were bright with emotion. "I loved you before you ever agreed to marry me. I saw you on those steps, saw your strength and your sorrow, and I knew. I knew you were the one I had been waiting for. Everything I told you about needing help at the ranch was true, but it was not the whole truth. I needed you, Zara. My life was empty before you, and now it is full to overflowing." They kissed as the sun slipped below the horizon, their sleeping son cradled between them, a testament to the life they had built from the ashes of tragedy and the bold gamble of a proposal on church steps. The years continued to unfold in the gentle rhythm of ranch life. When Sam was 4, Zara gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Grace, who looked like miniature versions of their mother and kept everyone on their toes with their boundless energy. The house Archer had built was suddenly bursting at the seams with noise and life and love. Jake met a woman in town, a widow named Sarah, and with Archer's blessing, built a small house on the ranch property where they settled with Sarah's young son. Pete eventually moved on to start his own spread further north, but Ben stayed, becoming almost a member of the family, an uncle to the Thornton children. Zara's brother reached out years after her marriage, having heard through mutual acquaintances that she had landed on her feet in Idaho. His letter was stiff and awkward, full of things unsaid, but Zara wrote back with news of her life and family. They would never be close, but the old wound scabbed over, no longer quite so raw. Challies grew and changed over the years, from a rough frontier town to a more settled community. The church where Zara had married twice, where she had experienced her greatest loss and taken her biggest gamble, remained a constant. She and Archer took the children there on Sundays, and sometimes Zara would stand on those worn steps and marvel at the path her life had taken. Reverend Matthews retired eventually, replaced by a younger minister who had not been there for the dramatic events of September 1882. But Mrs. Chen remained a fixture in town, and she never let anyone forget that she had been present at both of Mrs. Thornton's weddings, had helped bring all the Thornton children into the world, and had known from the start that Archer and Zara were meant to be together. When Sam turned 10, Archer began teaching him the ranching business in earnest, just as his own father had done for him. The boy took to it naturally, already showing signs of becoming a fine cattleman. The twins, meanwhile, proved to be excellent riders, fearless in the saddle in a way that made Zara's heart stop and Archer beam with pride. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, cattle lost to disease, hands who moved on and had to be replaced. There were moments of worry and struggle, times when money was tight and the work seemed endless. But through it all, Zara and Archer faced every challenge as partners, their bond strengthened by shared purpose and deepening love. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Archer planned an elaborate surprise. He arranged for Jake and Sarah to watch the children for the night, then took Zara on a ride up into the mountains to a high meadow filled with wildflowers. He had packed a picnic, complete with a bottle of wine from Boise, and they spent the afternoon like young lovers, talking and laughing and enjoying the rare gift of solitude. "I have something for you," Archer said as the afternoon waned into evening. He pulled a small box from his pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a delicate gold locket. Zara opened it to find a photograph of their family on one side, a picture they had commissioned in town the previous summer, and on the other side an inscription, "From church steps to forever." "All my love, eh?" Zara's eyes filled with tears. "Archer, it is beautiful." "I wanted you to have something that told our story," he said, fastening the locket around her neck. 15 years ago, I took the biggest gamble of my life. I asked a grieving woman I had never met to marry me, and by some miracle she said yes. Every day since then has been a gift, Zara. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. We happened to each other, Zara corrected, taking his face in her hands. We saved each other. I was lost and alone and broken, and you gave me a reason to keep going. You gave me a home and a family and a love I treasure more than anything. These 15 years have been the happiest of my life. They made love in the meadow as the sun set, with only the mountains as witnesses, recommitting themselves to each other as they had done so many times before. And when they rode back to the ranch under a canopy of stars, Zara knew that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and earned and worth every moment. More years passed, bringing with them the inevitable changes that time demands. Sam grew into a young man, eventually falling in love with a rancher's daughter from the next valley over. The wedding was held at the church in Challies, and Zara found herself standing on those famous steps again, this time watching her son marry his sweetheart with Archer's arm around her waist. "Remember," Archer murmured in her ear. "How could I forget?" Zara replied, leaning into him. "Best decision I ever made was to walk into that saloon and find you." The twins married as well, though not on the same day as each other, much to their mother's relief. Emma married a teacher who had come west to work at the new school in Challies, while Grace surprised everyone by marrying a geologist from back east who had come to study the mining operations, and fallen in love with both the country and the rancher's daughter he met there. The ranch house, empty of children for the first time in decades, felt too quiet at first. But Zara and Archer adapted, taking pleasure in the peaceful mornings, the ability to sit on the porch swing and talk without interruption. They were grandparents now, their children bringing the next generation to visit, filling the house again with noise and laughter on holidays and weekends. As they aged, Archer and Zara settled into the comfortable rhythm of a long marriage, finishing each other's sentences, communicating with looks and touches, secure in their knowledge of one another. Archer's hair went silver, and lines deepened around Zara's eyes, but they still saw each other as they had been on that first day. Strong, capable, worthy of love. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Archer was not feeling well, a persistent cough that worried Zara despite his assurances. She insisted he see the doctor in town, and the news was not good. His lungs, the doctor said, weakened by too many years of harsh winters and hard work. He needed rest, needed to slow down. Slowing down did not come naturally to Archer, but for Zara he tried. Sam took over more of the day-to-day running of the ranch, and Archer focused on the parts he enjoyed most. Working with the horses, maintaining the equipment, teaching his grandchildren the skills he had spent a lifetime perfecting. Zara treasured every moment, knowing now that their time was not infinite. They took long walks when Archer's health permitted, revisited the meadow where they had celebrated their 15th anniversary, spent evenings on the porch swing watching sunsets just as they always had. On a clear October day, with the aspens golden and the air crisp with the promise of winter, Archer and Zara sat together on their beloved swing. Archer had been quieter than usual, his breathing labored, but he had insisted on coming outside to watch the sunset. "I have been thinking," he said, his voice rough. "About what?" Zara asked, knowing already that this was an important conversation. "About how lucky I am, how lucky we are. 30 years ago, I took a chance on a woman I barely knew, and she took a chance on me. We built this life together, raised 3 beautiful children, left our mark on this land. Not many people get what we have had, Zara." "No," Zara agreed, tears already forming. "They do not." "I want you to know," Archer continued, taking her hand, "that if I had to do it all over again, I would not change a single thing. Not one moment, not one decision. You are my home, Zara. You always have been." "And you are mine," Zara whispered, holding tight to the hand that had guided her through 30 years of life. "Always." They sat together as the sun slipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and Zara felt Archer's grip slowly loosen. When she looked over, he had his eyes closed, a peaceful expression on his weathered face. "Archer," she said, though she already knew. He did not answer. He had gone quietly, painlessly, watching a sunset with his beloved wife by his side. It was, Zara thought through her tears, exactly how he would have wanted to go. The funeral brought together everyone whose lives Archer had touched. Family, friends, fellow ranchers, townspeople who remembered the young man who had built his spread through sheer determination. Sam gave the eulogy, speaking of a father who had taught by example, who had loved deeply and worked honestly, who had left the world better than he found it. Zara sat in the front pew of the church, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and felt the weight of grief and gratitude in equal measure. She had lost her partner, her love, her best friend. But she had also had 30 years with him, 3 decades of building a life together, of facing challenges side by side, of love that had started from the strangest of beginnings and grown into something beautiful and lasting. After the funeral, Zara stood alone on the church steps, the same steps where it had all begun. She thought about the scared young woman in the blood-stained wedding dress, the bold cowboy who had made an impossible proposal, the leap of faith that had changed both their lives forever. Sam came to stand beside her, putting his arm around her shoulders. "Are you all right, Ma?" Zara looked at her son, saw so much of Archer in his face, and smiled through her tears. "I am sad. I miss him terribly, but I am also grateful, Sam. Your father gave me everything. He gave me a family, a home, a purpose. He gave me you and your sisters. He gave me 30 years of love and laughter and partnership. Not everyone gets that. Not everyone gets to experience a love like ours." "He loved you so much," Sam said. "We all knew it. The way he looked at you never changed, not in all the years I can remember." "I loved him too," Zara said simply. "From that first kiss by the fire, maybe even before, I loved him, and I will carry that love with me for whatever time I have left." She did carry it, a precious weight in her heart. Zara lived another 8 years after Archer's death, remaining on the ranch that they had built together, surrounded by family. She taught her grandchildren to cook, told them stories of their grandfather, passed on the history of the Thornton Ranch and how it had come to be. She never remarried, never even considered it. She had found her great love, and nothing could replace or replicate what she and Archer had shared. Instead, she poured her energy into her family, into maintaining the legacy that she and Archer had created. On her 73rd birthday, Zara sat on the porch swing with her oldest grandchild, a young man named Archer in honor of his grandfather. He was about to get married himself, and he wanted advice. "How did you know Grandpa was the one?" he asked. "How were you brave enough to marry a stranger?" Zara smiled, her hand unconsciously moving to the locket she still wore every day. "I did not know, not really. I was desperate and frightened and grieving, but your grandfather saw something in me that I could not see in myself. He saw strength and possibility. And when he offered me a partnership, a chance to build something together, I was brave enough to say yes. Everything good in my life came from that one decision, from that one moment of courage on the church steps. You think everyone has someone like that, one person they are meant to be with." "I think we make our own fate," Zara said thoughtfully. "Your grandfather and I could have just had a practical arrangement. We could have lived as polite strangers sharing a house. But we chose to open our hearts to build something real. Love is not just about finding the right person, Archer. It is about being the right person, about choosing each other every day, about building a partnership based on respect and trust and genuine affection. That is what your grandfather and I did. We chose each other every single day for 30 years. The young man was quiet, absorbing this wisdom. "I hope my marriage is half as good as yours and Grandpa's was." "Then work at it," Zara advised. "Love your wife, respect her, be her partner in all things. That is the secret. There is no magic, no fate, just two people deciding to build a life together and following through on that decision every single day." Zara passed away peacefully in her sleep on a cold January night, surrounded by family who had gathered for the holidays. She was laid to rest beside Archer in the small cemetery outside Challies, their graves marked by a simple stone that read, "Archer and Zara Thornton, partners, friends, forever." The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through the generations. The house was updated and expanded, but the original structure remained, and the porch swing that Archer had built for Zara stayed in place, carefully maintained, a tangible reminder of the love story that had begun on church steps and endured through 3 decades of partnership. The story of how Archer and Zara met became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The bold proposal, the marriage of convenience that became a great love, the life they built together from nothing. It was a story about courage and faith, about second chances, and choosing to hope even in the darkest moments. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun set over the Idaho mountains and the aspens turned to gold, family members swore they could feel the presence of the ranch's founders, still sitting on that old porch swing, still watching the sunsets together, their love enduring beyond death, woven into the very fabric of the land they had cherished and the family they had created. The church in Challies still stood, its steps worn smooth by countless footsteps over the decades. New couples married there, starting their own journeys together, most of them unaware of the dramatic events that had unfolded on those very steps so many years before. But the few who knew the story, who understood what had happened there on that September day in 1882, looked at those steps differently. They saw them not just as wood and stone, but as the birthplace of something extraordinary. A love that had been born from tragedy and courage, that had grown and deepened over 30 years, that had created a legacy lasting generations. It was a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best, that courage can come in unexpected forms, and that love, real love, is not about perfection or romance or fairy tale beginnings. It is about two people choosing each other, day after day, through good times and bad, building something real and lasting through partnership and mutual respect and genuine affection. Zara Palmer had come to Idaho territory alone and grieving, with nothing but $17 and a blood-stained wedding dress. She had left it as Zara Thornton, beloved matriarch of a thriving ranch family, having lived a full life rich with love and purpose and meaning. And it all started because a cowboy saw a woman crying on church steps and had the courage to offer her a future, and because that woman had the courage to say yes. Their story became more than just family legend. It became a testament to the power of second chances, to the strength found in unexpected places, to the way love can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West, forged through hard work and harder winters, and lasting far beyond the lifetimes of the two people at its center. Years turned into decades, and decades into a century, but the Thornton Ranch remained, still family-owned, still thriving, still standing as proof that sometimes the biggest gambles pay off in ways we could never imagine. The porch swing, carefully preserved and restored when needed, sat in a place of honor, and visiting family members would often sit there in the evenings, watching the same sunsets that Archer and Zara had watched together, feeling connected to the past and the love story that had made their present possible. And if you asked any member of the Thornton family what the most important lesson from Archer and Zara's story was, they would tell you. It is never too late for a new beginning. Courage comes in many forms, and love, true love, is built on the foundation of partnership, respect, and choosing each other every single day. That was the legacy Archer and Zara had left behind, more valuable than land or cattle or buildings. They had shown that from the ashes of tragedy could rise something beautiful, that strangers could become soulmates, and that a life built on mutual respect and genuine partnership could stand the test of time. The story of the cowboy and the crying bride, of the impossible proposal and the leap of faith, of 30 years of partnership and love, lived on. It lived on in the family that carried their blood, in the ranch that bore their name, in the land they had worked and loved, and in the hearts of all who heard their story and understood that sometimes, just sometimes, the wildest gambles lead to the greatest rewards.